narrative here. And we're excited to have him as kind of our first national guest on the show. But his name is Helder Toste. He's the National Hispanic Engagement Coordinator for Trump Victory, and that's the Trump's re-election campaign. So thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you all for having me.
Usually helps if you turn on if I turn on your mic.
Sorry, yeah. Well, thanks for having me. I think the big thing is his name is Francis. That's the single.
Yes.
You know, it's the important thing. He's fourth generation Irish American. So you know, that's my.
It's a whole other conversation which we've already had. So why don't we? Let's stay a little bit focused.
I don't know why people don't realize as a Hispanic person. When you see Anglo-Saxon individuals like running amok and pretending to be Hispanics, that upsets an entire voter block that is constantly changing its ways. And I want, if you want to explain a little bit what happened over this weekend for the Hispanic vote in Hillsborough County.
Talk to us a little bit about what you're doing here, why you're in Hillsborough County, kind of like what your job entails, and then what you're seeing in general from the Hispanic vote on the Republican side.
Yeah, so I guess to kind of start things off, my name is Helder Toste. It doesn't seem like a Hispanic name. Totally get that. My mom is from Guadalajara, Mexico, Mexico, to say it right, and my dad's from Portugal. And I grew up on a dairy farm in California, so I know a lot about bad traffic. It's not a good thing. But I think, why are we here? I think this past weekend, we had Conga Caliente, biggest music festival, I think, in this, for sure, the Hillsborough area, one of the biggest in Florida. 60,000 people come. And, at the end of the day, the biggest next step forward for the party is how we're going to win, how we're going to do better in 2020 than we did before, is to just be out there talking to real people. And I think, anybody who came out, hung out, the weather was really awesome. People were having a really good time. And, if you compared our booth to the Democrat booth, it was totally night and day. They had two people sitting in the back. The most action they ever got is obviously the mayor of Tampa came, take a picture with them. Only time they got more than two people at the table. And we were just, line out the door, people taking pictures with the president, people getting our lit. We were talking in Spanish. We were really talking about a variety of Hispanic issues because the biggest thing Democrats like doing to our community is they treat us like one block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But Puerto Rican, Cuban, Dominican issues are not the same issues. Mexican American issues aren't the same issues.
Venezuela
and as a party,
issues,
they're not the same. Exactly. And so we have to be smarter about the way we're having real conversations with real Americans that either they're displaced because of communism, Hurricane Maria, or the third generation Mexican American or Cuban American, and they're here to try to make their life better.
So what are you seeing then? We talked a little bit about before the show. Like, what are you seeing when you're having these conversations with all these different groups of people, which are all, like you said, lumped into Hispanic, one category? But what are you seeing from individual voting blocks, and what are you seeing from around the country in Tampa? If you see anything from here.
So I guess the big things that we saw in Tampa, we had about 3 people that consistently came through to say bad things, but a lot of other people, they'd be having their Boricua caps and they'd give us a thumbs up. And
secretly too.
Secretly, it'd come out of the side. And, people are out there and they saw our booth. The people came over just to say thank you for being present.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, something that we're going to have to work on because we want to be more present. We want to be out in the community. I think what you're seeing is with the voter blocks is, okay, we were talking to a lot of Puerto Ricans. They're good for starting. Obviously, they're a very important group. 300,000 have moved into Florida since Hurricane Maria. But, what was happening all across this country, the state, was, Governor, Scott, now obviously Senator Scott, was meeting these people, telling them what resources were available, what they could do to make sure that, because these people are citizens and making sure that they're a part of the country, that they're being taken care of, that FEMA's dealing with their insurance claims. All that was a huge part of what ultimately led to his success. I think Governor DeSantis, Lieutenant Governor Janet Nunez, same thing. They were out there talking to these people. And what we heard at the booth was people that were like, we thought the FEMA process was going to take a lot longer. The government and the president moved very quickly. We're good. Our homes, if they're in Ponce, they're coming back up. If they're, in San Juan, they're coming back up. The airports, everything's standardizing better.
Yeah.
And that's just them. We talked to Panamanians that, we're talking about, obviously, the canal situation. It's run by the Chinese. They're getting increasingly nervous. What role does the U.S. play with financial business internationally in Latin America? And they're next to Colombia, of course, next door, Venezuela. And so how are you going to, the Colombian Americans, they're worried about the fact that they have millions of Venezuelans that are displaced and want to be, at the end of the day, a lot of these people want to be in their home country. And they just can't be because, socialist policies have pretty much destroyed these places.
Yeah.
And one of the saddest things I think is a case in point in college, I got to go, we had a dining hall. It was being run by a Venezuelan lady. She had practiced law for 35 years in Caracas and was running a dining hall in Connecticut because they were prosecuted by the government because they were educated, and they came after them. They came after the family, and then what happened? They left. And this family of 6 people trying to make ends meet in Connecticut, And we're talking about educated people that had real careers, real lives that were completely upended by what's happening. And so, I've been in Arizona, I've been in New Mexico, Texas. I'm running all over the country all the time. And what's been really eye-opening is I think people are feeling in a lot of ways that President Trump is sort of the kind of hope and change candidate that they've been really wanting to see. We don't get enough credit for it, but we had a more Hispanic vote for the president, Republican presidential candidate, than the last few cycles. We went from, I think, 26, 27, 29. We want to make that 31, 32 even higher if we can. But, Rick Scott won 48% of the Hispanic vote in Florida. We've elected governors consistently, senators across this country with nearly 50% of the Hispanic vote. And, at the end of the day, what it's going to take is us having real conversations about the unique issues that face every community, because they are all very unique. And as long as we start treating people like real people and not like just a generic, racial block that you can kind of harass, these people are going to start seeing that, I have a small business, or, I go to church every Sunday and I have a certain set of Christian values that I want to be able to espouse when I'm voting. And how we preserve that, and how we make sure as a party that we're going out there talking to people about where, we stand, because we stand with a lot of these groups.
Yeah.
Even today, the Trump administration just released a change to essentially, religious families adopting and, just something adoption, as simple as adoption. There were bars made to what families could do as far as actually letting and adopting and all that process for churches and faith groups. All those things have been changing, and something as simple as adoption is being benefited by the religious community. And so making sure that we can keep growing all that, and making sure that we can build stronger families. I mean, that's a lot of what we're doing.
Are there any other specific policies that you see being key vote changing single issues that to some of those Hispanic communities? Maybe it's different between the different groups that coming up.
Yeah, I think so. We're working really hard in New Mexico, and people are like, "Why would you go to New Mexico?" The last time it was by Bush in 04. But the second Beto O'Rourke said, "We're coming after your guns," the people in New Mexico were freaking out, because this is rough and tough land. These people are out there. They're working in the energy sector. They obviously there's a lot of wilderness out there, but these people are really proud about being one of the most preeminent frontier states of the country. And when someone says, "You know what? Regardless of what you think, what your identity is as a people, as a state, we're going to come take that away from you." And that really scares people, because if this is what they've done for multiple generations and this part of their identity, they want to protect that. And so that's one of the big ones. The other one that's really resonating with people, it's the number one issue consistently for the Hispanic voter bloc, is education. Homeschooling, charter schools, school choice, vouchers for low-income families, things that I think Florida's been doing a very good job.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody realizes that at all. I mean, like somebody brought it up after DeSantis got elected, right? And they said, like, "Oh my God, like, how did we get all of these African American communities and Hispanic communities and stuff like that they all went and voted for DeSantis and like a Republican, and everyone's like going crazy, like, why?" And they're like, "Because my kid's school's good now." And I don't think people realize that the benefit that they've seen from some of these charter schools going in. And every time I go to an event or a political function of some sort, I mean, it's just people railing against the funding that's being removed from public schools and stuff like that. But there's very little talk about the impact that charter schools have had on these minority communities.
Well, look, and to that point, I mean, charter schools aren't perfect, but they are filling the gap where a lot of these county school districts are falling short. They can't build schools fast enough. And this is where charter schools have come in and they've said, hey, you know what? You have to jump through a lot more logistical hurdles to build a school in this neighborhood. Well, guess what? We can buy an office building and set up a charter school in that office building. And they have a lot more flexibility because they aren't necessarily beholden to the same rules. But real quick, I wanted to, again, get back to something that you mentioned a few times, Helder, and something that I think is just mind-blowing. By the way, Helder Toste joining us. He's the National Hispanic Engagement Director for Trump Victory, Trump's re-election campaign. And that is a poll that came out from the University of North Florida, so Jacksonville, and it shows DeSantis, Governor DeSantis, with an 82% approval rating in the Hispanic community. That to me is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna run for president and win soon, right?
Also, I don't see how Florida,
if he keeps it up, why not?
Yeah.
Also, I don't see how Florida will go blue with this coming cycle. Not to get into that kind of fray at the moment. I know you can't talk about certain things, but the fact that everyone is loving the governor, everyone's having okay relations with the senators, those are our three biggest tiers right now in the Florida politics. And if you can't move those political points, Florida is going to go back to red.
They're trying really hard, and like I'll read like the Tampa Bay Times or some other like
Oh
newspaper
my
or something
God.
like that, and they're
It's
like
so frustrating
pulling
now.
like something wrong. Like they're trying so hard to make DeSantis a bad guy and the Republicans up in the state like legislature are bad people. But they've done such a good job. They did a great job the last session. They're going to do a great job again. And again, it's resonating with Hispanic communities and with minority communities. And that's why you see a poll with 82% approval rating. I mean, like that sounds pretty realistic to me.
Yeah, and I think to speak about the DeSantis bit, it was a really tight governor's race.
Yeah.
I knocked for a month doors in Broward County,
Yeah.
and then came back down for the recount.
rough.
And obviously we came with some really good wins, and we were really excited about that. But the thing that kind of walked away was for a race that was so close, the fact that when the DeSantis administration came in, got really, really popular, press, and very quickly, not just that, but started doing a lot of good things. It started immediately. We're talking about the Okeechobee, right?
Yep.
Did I pronounce that right?
Okeechobee,
Is that-
yeah.
There we go. All right.
Yeah, yeah.
The
You're
dams,
learning our
obviously,
words. Yeah.
pretty much the environmental crisis that had been kind of building. He moved on that pretty quickly. A lot of up and down, especially the eastern coast of Florida, people really appreciated what was being done about the issue. And that was also a number one issue on voters. And I think that takes to the next thing is, well, how are we going to win in 2020? And at the end of the day, it's going to be all about the ground game. We already have, Florida, we already have, multiple staffers. We have thousands of trained volunteers. We're knocking doors, we're registering voters all across up and down the state. And I think going forward, the only way, the thing with Florida is you're getting millions and millions of new neighbors every few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's
the only
biggest
way,
problem.
as a party, we're going to be prepared is to be talking to these neighbors.
Yeah,
Figure out what they care about and what matters most to them.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the points that I try and drive home to a lot of different people about all these different groups is that it's like you don't win future elections and everything by ignoring entire groups and writing them off, right? Like it's having conversations with them and explaining to them why our policies are more beneficial to their communities. And I think a lot of the Hispanic ones, especially if they came from a socialist country, they get it.
I don't understand where the Democrats are coming to thinking that they're going to be able to hijack the Hispanic vote, because we know a lot of people that register Democrat because they're afraid that that's what they think they have to do. They have to vote Democrat as Hispanics, but they'll never vote for a Democrat in their entire lives.
Yeah.
We've seen the statistics and the numbers that there's a lot of Hispanics out there that just will not vote for a Democrat. They'll always vote for the Republican. It's just trying to get them to change that voter registration, and that's the hardest thing to do with these people. But I understand.
Yeah.
It's that
Well, it's
fear.
also-
It's that kind of fear of they're coming from countries that the government was so overwhelming, so powerful, and then you come to the United States, which is the most powerful country in the world, and you think you have that. I understand. My grandparents.
But
were
it's
like
also what's lost in translation, because the fact is that most of them again have very broken little English, and the direct translation between Democratic Party, which means democracy, right? Like to them that's a literal translation, versus Republican Party meaning republic and representation. They again with that literal translation, I think that's also where we tend to lose some people. But my question for Helder. We've known. I mean, those of us who are on the right, who are conservative, who are Republican and Hispanic, we understand that they overblow the immigration issue, right, as a way to sway the Hispanic vote. It doesn't work. It's never worked. But where do you see room for improvement? Where are some of the areas you are seeing some pushback from on the people that you're talking to?
So I think that the biggest kind of, I guess if I'm reading the question right, the room for improvement, I think the number one issue we have in our community, and it's been, is just education. And I think we run with something as simple as, let's imagine you're an immigrant from Mexico, you're become a voter, but you're a panista, right? You're on the right wing of the Mexican spectrum. The colors there are blue and white. You come over here, you're thinking, and then even my dad from the Portuguese background, the conservative Republican Party of Portugal uses blue and white Democratic Party colors. And you come over and you think a lot of it translates, and it doesn't. And if we're not out there in the community talking about, hey, you know what? Like, this is actually what we stand for. We stand for, pro-life issues, for pro-economy, pro-opportunity, and letting you all live the American dream. And if we don't do that in English
bilingual.
and bilingual,
Oh my gosh.
in Spanish, Portuguese, especially too in Florida, we have a huge growing Brazilian community as well.
Yep.
Just doing it in the most genuine, direct way possible. You're not able to win everyone. We know that. But as long as we're out there having real conversations about these sort of things, that's where we're going to see the growth. I think and as a sort of segue to the jobs report, we see a lot of really, really exciting things happening for the Hispanic community.
Oh, loving it.
I think that Anibal has been waiting to talk about the jobs report for hours. So Johnny,
It's really awesome.
If you want to get rid of the Trump graphic and make it a jobs graphic, I think we're gonna give Anibal his attic.
I loved the
Oh, yeah.
jobs report. I thought it was by far one of the most interesting ones just because of what occurred. I will say though, right now, to kind of tie the two together, the joblessness rate for Hispanics hit an all-time low of 3.9% in September, while the African American maintained its lowest rate of 5.5. Hispanic women unemployment is 3.9, where black women is 4.6. I think these are some of the best numbers that we're seeing, and that's what's going to push the Trump agenda even further. When you have a job, when you're making more money than you were before, I think currently it's an extra $5,000 that people can feel in their pockets with this economy that's growing even further. And so a lot of people in the last month, and we're saying that, we're getting ready for a recession, we're moving in that direction. But what really people did not realize is that you can't just say that and think it's just not going to go anywhere. And so people were expecting a horrible jobs report for October because of the strike that was happening in the GM. But what really happened, and I've been waiting, all day to be able to wear this hat because I don't have any gel in my hair, so I'm very happy to wear this hat. Is because so October's numbers came out last week, 185,000, and Trump made a comment where he's like, "Oh no, it was really 300 and something thousand in the job report," and people were really upset about that because they're like, "That's not true. It's really the it's actually 128,000. 128,000. What are you talking about?" Like, no, and you had to do the research. I know you're bored, Jake.
We lost 50% of our viewers.
I know you're bored. Put something shiny in front of Jake real quick, and we'll finish this real quick. But at it was the best part of it was the reconfiguration of numbers for the month of August and September, which added an additional 95,000 workers, and that's great for us moving into the Christmas holiday season of having that strong of a jobs report, which means that we will not be heading into recession. I don't think we'll be heading into recession in 2020. I think it's going to be a great year. We're going to see even better growth. But I think the Hispanic growth outreach and how figuring out to letting the Hispanics know and Black communities of how good it is right now, and to be proud of what they've done in their community that they've accomplished.
Yeah, so right now, to kind of just sum up some of those numbers, Latinas are the #1 new job creators. Latino community as a whole, we've gone up, just since President Trump has been elected, there is a 1.5% increase in household ownership, which translates to 590,000 households now having a home as opposed to renting, which is obviously an investment in their family's future. We're looking at things as simple as, if we just take that jobs total number and we times it times a salary of $33,000 a year, so whatever income, that's $4 billion coming into the economy. Mm-hmm. And that's not an insignificant number. And if you combine that with the fact that the president has been fighting tooth and nail for all the trade deals, USMCA, which the Democrats have not bothered talking about because they know at the end of the day they have to vote for this because it's the future for this country. Yeah. And it's going to benefit the Hispanic communities that are living in Arizona, in Texas, New Mexico, California, Florida, of course, with all the ports. I mean, we know this is the right decision, and the Democrats don't want to talk about it because it's not convenient, because they're too busy talking about every other issue besides the economy, because the economy is doing too good. I think when you saw the media really talking and highlighting, a recession's coming, 2% growth, blah, 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 we're still on track to get over 3 right now, as it is. The other thing that's happening is consumer confidence. You think the stock market, obviously it went through a correction, we know that, but it's looking great. It's moving in the right direction. I think at the end of the day, especially with the holidays coming, companies are heading in the black earlier. Black Friday is iconic for that day, but companies are in the black sooner.
We're ready on Facebook by the 5th.
Yeah.
I mean, the ads are up. They're ready.
Like, yeah. And it's coming. We're already, I guess.
Even
3 weeks away.
Yeah, and even third quarter earnings season was phenomenal this cycle. So I think it was 150 companies were in the black compared to the ones that were in the red. So again, the fear of a recession which was being prompted by the media, because that's what they want. They want the economy to suffer, so then that makes Trump suffer.
Right, but the best part is when even they can't deny it. Right, they can't deny the headline, and even CNN said, despite the GM strike, which of course they're going to count that, they're going to factor that in, even though officially they're still employed, they're just choosing not to work. The numbers were still fantastic.
Yeah, I think that's all pointing in the right direction. I mean, I don't know if we see any sort of major recession before the election. I don't think we're seeing it in the rest of the year, that's for sure. Not November, December. I don't want to. I'm not an economist, so I can't. Yeah. Even them, I feel like they're wrong all the time.
I mean, the number one thing really is, if we support the president's trade agenda, which I think is a winning agenda, be it for agriculture, light industry, manufacturing, I think what you're going to see is, the numbers, they could really be much better if the trade was flowing at a much better rate, and so many people are going to benefit from it. I think the Japan deal in particular was great. Yeah. And in particular, a lot of people are nervous about China. The president is fighting them tooth and nail as it is. But the thing is, the better economic health we have on our continent, be it our hemisphere, that helps protect us from whatever the heck China wants to do to hurt.
I'm the only one on this panel that's ever pushed the concept that technically the amount, I think it's less than 10% of the country's GDP is actually dictated by foreign exports. So yes, Europe is going into a recession right now. Hong Kong just slipped into one right now. China has been faking their numbers for years. So the world is allowed to go to hell in a handbasket and does not really affect that much of the GDP when it comes to the United States.
One of the questions I would like to ask you, though, since we have you on the show, is about Puerto Rico specifically. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously they were hit by a hurricane. That was a big thing. A lot of people displaced, and then obviously then you have like the corruption with everything that's going on there, and what do you see happening specifically with Puerto Rico and maybe policies that we can implement from a federal standpoint, or maybe a state out in Florida that help increase not just getting more votes from Puerto Ricans, but in helping that community out and ensuring that's more of a prosperous island.
Yeah, so I guess one of the big things is President Trump's administration gave the single largest federal aid assistance package ever to Puerto Rico in the history of the island since 1903, 4, something like that. And a large part of that had to do with Jennifer Gonzalez, who she's a statewide elected official that represents the island. She, at the end of the day, is essentially quarrels with and works with the Republicans very closely. She's admired, I think, just in general. Last year, she was here at Conga Caliente in Tampa, beating the drums and hanging out and dancing and just being with the Puerto Rican people. She's really emblematic of sort of, she's been, I would argue, the kind of one of the most stable political voices for the island for the past few years, when obviously a lot of things were going with the government. At the end of the day, I don't have a comment about that, but I do have a comment about the fact that Jennifer Gonzalez has been a really great voice for the island. And I think when you think about the Floridian side of things, the RNC last cycle we ran in Kissimmee, and we were here in Tampa as well. We were in Orlando. We were hosting Bienvenidos a Florida workshops. We were out there talking to people, giving them resources. And I think how you make the island more prosperous, first of all, we need to keep empowering the diaspora. That's a really, really big thing. A lot of people want to move back.
Yes.
I've been in New England. I've been out west. You meet Puerto Ricans. What do they say? This is fine, but I really just want to be on a beach in Ponce, right? Like, that's what I want. Or I want to be in San Juan. I want to be with my family. Like, I want to just be home.
Have we had any discussions on Florida purchasing Puerto Rico? This is something that
no comment.
I was gonna say, why are we going? In my mind, like, can we annex it, or do we have to like purchase it out loud? I didn't want to have you go through that.
No, absolutely not.
We're not bringing it a state. We're not making it.
Well, I think that's the thing. Is self-determination, and I think ultimately is something that the Republican Party's been working very closely with the island about.
Yes.
I know that the Trump administration has been trying to figure out, a way to manage, I think the relationship with the island. I think of all our territories, I think we forget we have the Virgin Islands as well, and Guam, and that we have the Marianas and Samoa. I think Puerto Rico, because it has such a big population, the diaspora is very large, does play an outsourced role in I think the territorial versus U.S. relationships. And I think at the end of the day, the administration is going to do whatever it can to support them because they're citizens, the administration has acknowledged that. I think one of the biggest things we heard at the booth, and I want to go back to this, FEMA insurance payouts were within less than a year. They were 8 months to a year. And to be completely frank, even that is so much faster than you've seen in other disasters. I mean, be it hurricane damage from other hurricanes, still certain states haven't gotten the payouts yet. And we know a lot of that's just mismanagement from the previous administration and just trying to catch up. But I think the Trump administration, in particular Republicans, have been really well prepared the past few years to deal with natural disasters, to make sure that people, the housing, the electricity, energy, all these sort of basic things necessary to function are coming back very, very quickly. And so we're very proud about that.
The Hispanic vote, I feel this cycle is going to be something that I do think we're going to get above 30. I think we would even get closer to 40% in regards to the Hispanic vote voting for Trump, just because things are working so well within the Hispanic communities. Now, with other communities, I don't know what's going on with them as closely because I'm not in those communities. Yeah. But with the Hispanic vote, you hear many people that are registered Democrats that are so upset of what's happening right now with their candidates, so upset with what's being done to Donald Trump, and what they're hearing what's happening on CNN, but they're looking at their lives and they're like, this is nothing compared to what the media is saying. And so that's that disconnect is making it more difficult for Hispanics to vote or even want to go out to vote to begin with.
Yeah, and I think on that topic, My mom, she's a very conservative Catholic Mexican woman. Would never vote for a Democrat in her life because she's pro-life. But I'm her son, and she'll call me, hey, so I don't think this is true, but Jorge Ramos on Univision said, and I'm like, Mom, like it's not. You can't listen to Jorge. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's obviously part of the media establishment that's trying to defeat the party and defeat our incredible, I think, forward movement for this country.
Well, and I've been saying for years that he's no longer even a journalist. He's now become an activist who happens to have media as a platform. But to me, he's no different than any other liberal out there with YouTube or Facebook as a platform. He just has a major television news network at his behest.
But what do we have on the Hispanic side, for the conservative Hispanic side? Like, I don't really see someone on our side being able to have that kind of influence in the Spanish community to be able to be a counterbalance to him. Like,
I'm right here, bro.
No.
Let's go. Let's go.
I'm moving on from that topic.
I think that's a good way to end this.
So, Trump moving to Florida.
Yes.
Oh, that's
Yes.
right. That's right. Well, as somebody who grew up in Palm Beach, we
Bring my graphic back up.
We are very familiar with Donald Trump. Before the presidency, most people were not that big of a fan for a lot of the random stuff that he decided to do to the county, the flagpole. But we're happy to have him. Of course, he decided to make his residence Florida. I mean, he said it himself in his tweet. I mean, like, his taxes in New York are terrible.
Yeah.
The politicians have stopped playing ball with him because he's the president and everything now. I mean, who knows what was going on beforehand? I won't comment on that. But clearly it was everything was beneficial enough for him to stay there. Now it's no longer like that, and so it's like he comes to a much more business, what's the word I'm looking for a business friendly state, and a business friendly climate. And so, I mean, I think it's a great statement by our president. It's just nothing but fantastic things for Florida, for Palm Beach, and He's already been a citizen.
Okay, so rather than Jake rambling on and bragging about Palm Beach, Helder, what kind of an impact do you think this is going to have on the campaign, right? Because you're going to be on the ground floor nationally, but for us here in Florida, what kind of an impact do you see this having on what the campaign's going to look like here? That now this is his home state.
Locks it up, baby. Come home.
I mean, right? That's
home.
what we're saying. Look, at the end of the day, Trump has for quite some time expressed his deep love for this state. He kicked off his re-election campaign literally in Orlando. And if that's not telling you that he's not only watching Florida as a valuable state, because we know it is, it's super important. He won by over 100,000 votes. Nobody thought that was going to happen. We're shooting for 200,000 plus this time around, even more. The Latinos for Trump part under the umbrella also kicked off here in the state as well. They just had an event in Orlando. I've been here for the past few days in Tampa. We're hitting the state pretty hard, but the fact that the president is making his residency here, like we said, it's not a surprise. I think in a lot of ways for a lot of people, he absolutely loves Florida. I think he sees, I think in a lot of ways, the fact that people here have been incredibly welcoming.
Yes.
And just even before, if we think of everything from Governor Scott now to DeSantis. The governors have been doing a very good, both of them at this point have done a really good job of making Florida a business-friendly state, making it good for families, making it good to start businesses, making it good to relocate to. And so what's happening, obviously, you have millions and millions of people moving here, but they're moving here because of all these really great opportunities. And I think the president's move to say, you know what, like, for a guy that obviously was in Home Alone, so many years ago, and, clearly, was an icon on Fifth Avenue for so long. The fact that he's moving to Florida not only just says Florida is an important state, which we know it is, but it says, you know what, I want to go to a place that I actually want to live in.
As long as he doesn't shut down Palm Beach International Airport, which is something he wanted to do because they were flying over Mar-a-Lago, I am happy to
that
have
I don't know
him.
about.
I am happy to have him as a resident.
Well, now that's practically his personal airport now at this point.
But I think to the point that was being made about, what does this mean for Florida? Like I said, once again, we already have, in the dozens, almost hundreds of staffers in the state. We have thousands of trained volunteers. We're going to be out there knocking doors. We've already knocked thousands of doors. We've already registered thousands of voters. I mean, these are things that are already happening, and we're registering Republicans. We're out there. We're doing the work. It is obviously going to help that this is going to be, hopefully more of a home base for the president. And people here, Floridians love turning out for these rallies.
Yes.
And so if the president can do Pensacola, Orlando, Tampa, and Miami, and then get to be in his own bed, that's like the best thing in the world for him. And I think Floridians are going to respond very positively.
Yeah, but I would imagine that amps up the pressure for the staff here in Florida to make sure that we win.
It definitely does. I mean, like you need to see it at each one of the local levels and at the county level, and make sure that our state Republican Party is all on the same page.
Are we even going to touch that?
No,
right
we're
now?
not. And I think I want to thank. I want to thank. I think I want to thank. Want to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And giving us, because we do probably need to wrap it up. We're probably a little bit over our time, which is
Sorry
what
about
happens.
that.
Which is what happens every time we don't have one of the girls on the show. The girls keep us on track and on our 1 hour mark. I will tell you that for sure.
The girls do their job. They do exactly what they need to do.
Well, and they're making jobs. So
yeah,
you know,
and they're making
that's what it
jobs.
is.
They're all working. That's why.
That's right. That is why.
That's really bad for us.
So I anyway, John, you want to wrap this one up for us? 'Cause we're doing a bad job here.